The wind was sharp that evening. Snowflakes danced in the air, covering the spaceport streets in white. Jonas pulled his coat tighter and walked quickly, holding a steaming cup of kava in his hands. He had just finished a long shift fixing power cells at Dock C9. His back ached and his fingers were numb, but the warmth of the cup gave him comfort. The spaceport was quiet now. Shops were closed, lights dimmed. Only a few travelers rushed by, faces hidden under thick scarves and hoods. Jonas passed a bench near the edge of the plaza. That's when he saw her. She sat alone, her head bowed, a long cloak wrapped tightly around her small frame. Snow had started to gather on her shoulders, but she didn't move. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the streetlight. Jonas stopped walking. She looked lost. She didn't seem like the usual aliens who passed through here. No gold badges, no protective guards, no translator earpiece, just a girl with silver hair, shivering in silence. Jonas looked around. No one else even noticed her. They just walked past like she didn't exist. He hesitated, then walked toward her. "Hey," he said gently. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't speak. She looked up at him, her eyes large and glowing faintly violet. There was fear in them, but also curiosity. Jonas didn't push her. Instead, he slowly offered his cup. "It's hot kava," he said. "Take it. You look frozen." She stared at the cup, then at him. Her hands, thin and delicate, reached out slowly. She took the cup like it was a precious gift. She sipped it carefully, her lips barely touching the edge. Then she took a longer drink, and her shoulders relaxed a little. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice musical and light. "You're welcome," Jonas replied with a small smile. He sat on the bench beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm Jonas," he said. "I fix ships." The girl nodded. "I'm Vera," she answered. After a pause, "Nice to meet you, Vera." Another pause followed, filled with quiet snow and soft city hums. "You from around here?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She shook her head slowly. "No," she said, "just passing through." There was sadness in her voice, and something else too, a kind of loneliness that Jonas knew well. He didn't ask more questions. Instead, he pointed to the stars above, barely visible through the spaceport's shield dome. "Funny," he said. "So many people from so many planets come through here. But it still feels empty sometimes." Vera looked up too. "I thought this place would feel different," she whispered. "Safer." Jonas nodded. "Some parts are," he said. "Some aren't." She didn't answer, but her eyes stayed on the stars. Then she looked at him again. Really looked. "You didn't ask me where I'm from," she said. Jonas shrugged. "Didn't think it mattered," he replied. "You looked cold, that's all." For the first time, Vera smiled. It was small, but it changed her whole face. She suddenly looked younger, softer, more real. Jonas stood up, brushing snow off his coat. "Come on," he said. "There's a food stall still open down the block. I can buy you something warm." Vera stood too, still holding the now half-empty cup. "Why?" she asked. "You don't know me?" Jonas looked at her and said simply, "You were sitting alone in the snow. I didn't want to leave you like that." She blinked, surprised. Most beings asked for names, papers, credits, favors, but this man offered warmth without asking anything in return. She followed him quietly. They walked side by side down the icy street. Jonas talked about silly things, engine noise, broken tools, favorite soups. Vera listened, smiling once while behind them, in the shadows, a small drone hovered. Its lens zoomed in on Vera's face. The red light blinked twice. Target confirmed, but neither of them noticed. They were too busy walking through the snow, two strangers who, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel so alone. The food stall was old and simple. A glowing sign flickered above it reading, "Theo's Soups and Stuff." In 2 languages, Jonas led Vera to one of the heated stools and motioned for her to sit. She hesitated, but the warmth was too tempting. She sat down quietly, clutching the warm kava cup like a treasure. Theo, a thick-bearded man with a robotic arm, looked over and smiled. "Late night, Jonas?" he asked, wiping a bowl with a steaming rag. "Yeah," Jonas said. "2 bowls of synth stew, extra pepper." He glanced at Vera. "She needs something hot." Theo nodded without question. He didn't ask who she was or why she looked like royalty dressed as a traveler. In Theo's stall, everyone was just hungry, that was enough. As the stew cooked, Vera looked around with wide eyes. Everything fascinated her: steam from the pots, the flicker of hollow menus. Even the way people called out orders. She leaned closer to Jonas and asked, "Why is this place so simple yet so comforting?" Jonas raised a brow. "Simple?" he said. "This place barely survives. Most of us work 2 shifts just to eat here." Vera tilted her head. "Still, it feels more honest than the marble halls I know." She didn't mean to say that, but it slipped out. Jonas looked at her, confused. "You've lived in marble halls?" She paused, then quickly shook her head. "I meant stories I heard." She lied softly. "From travelers." Jonas didn't push her. He just gave a soft chuckle. "Yeah, well, you won't find gold here," he said. "Just stew, warmth, and maybe a good friend if you're lucky." Theo placed 2 bowls in front of them, steam rising like clouds. Vera picked up the spoon, sniffed it, and took a small bite. Her eyes widened. "It's delicious," she whispered. "So warm." Jonas smiled. "Told you." They ate quietly for a while, and Vera kept glancing at him. He was nothing like the suitors she was introduced to back home. No shiny robes, no prideful speeches, no fake charm, just a tired human with kind eyes and calloused hands. "Do you always help strangers?" she asked after a few minutes. Jonas leaned back, rubbing his neck. "Not always," he said. "But something about you felt different." She blinked. "Different how?" He shrugged. "You looked like someone who hadn't been treated kindly in a long time." Her spoon stopped in midair. He was right. Back home, she was surrounded by servants, advisors, cameras, and pressure. But not kindness, not real kindness. "I'm not who you think I am," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Jonas raised a brow again. "I haven't made any guesses," he replied. "And I'm not planning to. You're Vera, and you looked cold. That's all that mattered." That answer hit her like a wave. She looked down at her bowl, pretending to eat more, hiding the sudden mist in her eyes. Jonas glanced at the clock. "It's getting late," he said. "You got a place to stay?" She hesitated again, then shook her head. "No." He sighed and rubbed his face. "I know a cheap hostel," he said. "They don't ask questions, and I know the owner. She owes me." Vera nodded quietly. As they got up and walked out of the stall, another drone zipped silently over their heads. It scanned her posture, compared it to a dozen past hollow profiles. A light blinked green. Match confirmed. In a hidden room across the city, a bounty broker leaned closer to the screen. "The lost Zirali heir," he muttered. Finally, they reached a narrow building with glowing windows and a crooked entrance. Jonas led her to the front desk where a tired woman with cybernetic eyes looked up. "This is Vera," Jonas said. "She needs a warm bed for the night." "I'll pay for it." The woman scanned Vera's face, then looked at Jonas. He nodded, and she handed over an old metal key. "No funny business," she muttered, but smiled a little. In her room, Vera sat on the bed and stared out the window. The city lights shimmered like stars, and down there, somewhere, a simple human named Jonas was walking back into the snow. She touched her wrist gently, activating a hidden interface. A glowing blue circle formed in the air. "Status report," a soft AI voice said. "I found him," she whispered. "The one who didn't ask." Far above the city, a sleek black ship hovered silently within the clouds. No lights, no sound, just shadow. Inside the ship, a soft hum filled the control room. Several alien guards stood in armor, their eyes locked on the glowing image of a blue-skinned girl. Her name was not Vera. "Not to them," target confirmed, said one of the soldiers. "Zirali heiress, daughter of High Matron Sorel. Estimated value if recovered." 400 million credits. The leader, a grizzled bounty tracker, narrowed his eyes. She's walking around with a human, he growled. Interesting. Back in the small hostel room, Vera stood barefoot on the warm floor. She wore simple clothes now, a gray thermal shirt and soft pants. Gone were the silks and ornaments of her royal past. She looked like any other traveler, tired and quiet, but inside her wrist, beneath a layer of synthetic skin, was a living crystal interface. She tapped it lightly, and a soft blue light appeared above her palm. AI Unit 07, she whispered. Confirm local scan. A calm female voice answered. Scan complete. No known threats within 20 meters. Human subject Jonas. Veil, trust level 92%. Vera smiled faintly. He really didn't know who she was. He didn't care about her name, her wealth, her power. He offered kindness because he wanted to, not because he expected anything that made him rare, that made him dangerous. To her family, back on her homeworld, marriage was not about love. It was about legacy, empire, and control. She had met dozens of powerful suitors, each more polished than the last. They all smiled the same way, bowed the same way, and tried to hide their greed behind soft words. But Jonas didn't bow. He laughed, he joked, and he offered her his only hot drink. That moment had felt more genuine than anything in her palace life. In the morning, sunlight slipped through the cracked window blinds. Jonas arrived with a paper bag of warm rolls and a small canister of soup. He knocked gently, and Vera opened the door, her hair slightly messy, her eyes still glowing in the light. Brought you breakfast, he said, smiling. She stepped aside to let him in. He placed the food on the table and sat on the edge of a chair, rubbing his knees. I hope. It's not weird, he said. I just figured you might be hungry. She nodded. It's kind, she replied. Most wouldn't bother. They sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping the warm soup. Vera watched him carefully. He was tired but never complained. He smiled even though life had clearly not been easy for him. Why are you so kind? She asked suddenly. Jonas looked up, surprised. No reason, he said with a shrug. I just try not to be a jerk. Vera tilted her head. Even when no one sees it? He nodded. Especially then? Her heart beat a little faster. If only her mother could see this moment, she would be furious. The Zerali heiress sitting in a plain room with a human nobody, smiling like she belonged there. In the shadows of the city, the bounty team landed quietly in an alley. They moved like ghosts, scanning every building in the district. The signal was getting stronger. She's here, one of them said, looking at the tracker. Room 302. Meanwhile, Vera looked at Jonas and took a deep breath. There's something I must tell you, she said softly. Jonas leaned forward, curious. I'm not just Vera, she said. I'm Virelia of House Zerali, daughter of the High Matron, heir to the third moon. Jonas blinked slowly. What? I ran away, she continued. They were going to bind me to someone I didn't choose. A contract of power, not love. He stared at her, eyes wide. You're serious? She nodded. And now they're looking for me. Jonas stood up, pacing the room. So you're saying there could be bounty hunters out there right now? Yes, she said. But I couldn't go back, not without knowing if someone could see me for who I really am. And you think that's me? Jonas asked, his voice unsure. Vera stepped closer. You didn't ask about my title, she said. You asked if I was cold. No one else has ever done that. Before Jonas could respond, a red light blinked under the door. Vera's wrist glowed in alarm. They found me, she whispered. The hallway outside the room echoed with soft, heavy footsteps. Vera's glowing wrist crystal blinked fast now. Each pulse meant they were closer. Jonas grabbed his coat and looked around quickly. We need another way out, he said, voice low but steady. Vera nodded and moved to the small bathroom window. It was old, rusted, but just wide enough. Jonas climbed up first, kicking it open with a loud snap. Then he reached down and helped her up. Her hand in his felt warm and electric. Snow hit their faces as they dropped into the alley behind the building. Vera pulled her hood tight and Jonas led her down the narrow path between buildings. Behind them, they heard shouting in an alien tongue, followed by the sound of boots stomping metal. "Stairs! They're fast," Vera said. Jonas didn't answer. He just pulled her along. They ran for blocks, ducking under signs, through doors, over fences. Finally, they stopped in an old tram station, hidden beneath a broken terminal. Jonas breathed heavily, wiping sweat from his brow. Vera stood beside him, calm, but focused. Her heart raced not from fear, but from everything that had just happened. "You okay?" he asked, still catching his breath. She nodded. "Yes." "You didn't have to run with me." Jonas looked at her like she had said something silly. "Of course I did," he replied. "Who else would have helped you down that tiny window?" She smiled, and in that broken-down station surrounded by flickering lights and silence, she knew this human didn't see her like others did. He wasn't impressed by her name, her power, or her legacy, and because of that, he was the one she had been searching for. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small glowing cube. It shimmered like a frozen flame, rotating gently in her palm. "What is that?" Jonas asked, blinking at the light. Vera held it out. "My family calls this a binding crystal," she said. "It connects to our most private systems, ships, vaults, records. It also stores a copy of our will." Jonas took a cautious step back. "Sounds expensive," he said carefully. "It is," she replied. "It's also priceless." She stared into his eyes, her voice becoming soft and serious. "I want you to have it." Jonas blinked. "Me?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. I came here to find someone not from my world, someone who could see me as Vera, not as Virelia the heiress." Jonas raised his hands, unsure how to respond. "I just gave you a hot drink," he said, trying to joke. "This is way above my pay grade." Vera didn't laugh. She stepped closer. "And you didn't ask for anything after that," she said. "You didn't stare or bow or calculate what you could gain." "I don't need a throne," she continued. "I need someone who would protect me when no one else will." "You already did that." Jonas shook his head slowly, overwhelmed. "You barely know me." "I know enough," she whispered. "I know what kindness looks like." She placed the crystal gently in his palm. It felt warm, alive, like it breathed with energy. Jonas stared at it, unsure what to do. "This some kind of proposal?" he asked nervously. Vera looked down, then met his eyes again. "In my culture, yes," she said quietly. "But you don't have to answer now." Jonas opened his mouth to speak, but the ground above them shook. Lights flickered, and a rumble echoed through the tunnels. "They found us," Vera whispered. Jonas stuffed the cube into his coat, grabbed her hand, and pulled her down another stairwell. They entered an old maintenance route, dark and narrow. Vera's wrist crystal lit the way. They didn't speak. As they ran, hearts pounding. Minutes later, they burst out into the lower levels of the shipyard. Old cargo units surrounded them, forgotten and rusting. Jonas ducked behind a broken shuttle and pulled her close. "We can hide here," he said. "For now." Vera leaned her head on his shoulder, exhausted but safe. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "If we escape this, would you come with me?" Jonas didn't speak at first. He stared out into the darkness, then looked at her glowing eyes. "I don't know your world," he said. "I don't know the rules, the politics, the games." "You don't have to," she replied. "You just have to stay as you are." "That's all I want." In the distance, lights flashed through the fog. But in that moment, the human and the heiress sat together in silence, not as royalty and citizen, but as two souls who had found something rare in each other. The fog rolled thick across the shipyard's lower decks. Rust covered the old metal containers like scars from forgotten wars. Jonas peeked around the corner of a broken shuttle, his breath fogging in the cold air. He listened closely. Footsteps. Heavy, sharp, organized. "They're here," he whispered. Vera nodded, her eyes glowing faintly under her hood. She could feel them too, not just the footsteps, but their intent. Hunters didn't stop once they locked onto a target. Not unless someone stopped them. Jonas grabbed a steel rod from the ground. "Stay low," he said, "and stay close." Vera followed without a word. She wasn't used to taking orders, not even from her own generals, but something about Jonas made her trust him without question. They moved from crate to crate, staying in the shadows. A faint hum passed over them. A drone scanning the area. Jonas pulled her under a metal platform. Just in time, the red light swept past and vanished. Above them, the hunters moved with precision. Each one wore high-grade armor and carried non-lethal rifles. Orders were clear: bring her back alive no matter the cost. The human was not a target. Unless he got in the way, one of the hunters paused. A tall figure with red optics and a long-range scanner. "She's near," he said, voice robotic. "Within 20 meters. Fan out," their leader ordered. "Block every exit." Below, Jonas gritted his teeth. "They're going to trap us in here," he said. "We need a way out." Vera tapped her wrist crystal, bringing up a small hollow map. "There's a hidden loading tunnel under this floor," she said. "It leads to an old transit line." Jonas stared at her. "You couldn't have mentioned that earlier?" She gave him a look. "I just remembered the coordinates." He sighed, then nodded. "Lead the way, princess," he said with a small grin. She raised a brow. "You're enjoying this?" "A little," he admitted. "I've never outrun galactic bounty hunters before." They crawled along the edge of the shipyard, reaching a broken stairwell. Vera activated a panel hidden behind old cargo tags. A quiet click echoed through the silence. The floor panel slid open, revealing a dark passage below. They climbed down fast just before a flash grenade exploded above them. The bounty hunters had found their last hiding place. "Seal it," Jonas yelled. Vera pressed her wrist again. The hatch closed with a thud. Darkness swallowed them. For a moment, there was only the sound of their breath. Then her wrist crystal lit the tunnel, casting a soft blue glow. Jonas looked around. It was narrow and damp, but it stretched far into the unknown. They walked quickly, boots splashing in puddles. Jonas kept glancing back. "Why do they want you so badly?" he asked finally. "They already have everything." Vera slowed her pace. "They don't want me," she said softly. "They want to control me. To marry me off to one of the political heirs from the outer systems." "A bloodline contract," Jonas winced. "That sounds awful." "It is," she whispered. "But if I choose my own mate, then their plans fall apart." Jonas blinked. "So if you marry someone like me, they lose everything," she said. "Power, land, access to Earth's trade routes." Jonas shook his head in disbelief. "All because I gave you a cup of kava." Vera stopped walking. "No," she said, stepping in front of him. "All because you were kind. You treated me like a person, not a pawn." They stared at each other in the tunnel's glow. Something deep and silent passed between them. Not a word, but a feeling. Then the ground above them shook again. Boom! Another explosion. "They're breaking through," Jonas muttered. They ran again, deeper into the tunnel. The sound of footsteps above grew louder, faster. At the end of the corridor, a broken maintenance door stood in their path. Jonas pried it open with his rod, just enough for Vera to slip through. Then he followed, pulling the door shut behind them. The tunnel opened into a massive, abandoned transit station. Old trains, rusted on broken rails. Weeds grew through cracks in the metal floor. "This is where the old mining line passed," Vera said. "We can take one of the emergency rails out." Suddenly, shouts behind them. 3 bounty hunters dropped from a side tunnel, weapons raised. "Step away from the heiress," one ordered. "She belongs to Zerali High Court." Vera stepped forward. "No," she said firmly. "I belong to no one." They fired. Jonas tackled her to the ground just in time. Bolts slammed into the wall above them. He rolled, picked up a pipe, and charged at the nearest hunter. It was a hopeless fight. He knew that, but he wasn't going to let them take her. The battle was short but brutal. Jonas fought like someone with nothing to lose. Vera used her tech to overload a hunter's weapon. In the chaos, 2 were disabled. The third ran, Calling for backup, Jonas leaned against the train wall, breathing hard. "Still think I'm just a mechanic?" he asked, bleeding from a cut on his head. Vera knelt beside him, gently touching his cheek. "You're more than that," she said, voice shaking. "You're mine." The abandoned transit station was quiet again. Only the sound of Jonas's breathing and the distant echo of dripping water filled the air. Vera helped him lean against the rusted train wall, her hands trembling as she checked the cut on his head. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "You could have been killed." Jonas gave a tired smile. "You think I'd let them take you without a fight?" She looked at him, her glowing violet eyes full of emotion. "No one's ever fought for me like that," she said. "Not even my own blood." Jonas winced as she cleaned the cut using a cloth from her coat. "You don't owe me anything," he muttered. "I'm just a guy who gave you a drink and swung a pipe like an idiot." Vera shook her head slowly. "You're not just anything," she said. "You're the only one who ever saw me. Not my title, not my family name, just me." He looked at her, eyes soft but confused. "Why me?" he asked. "You could have chosen anyone, someone with power, someone from your world." She didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached into her inner pocket and pulled out the binding crystal. It glowed gently in the darkness, pulsing with a soft rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. "In Zirali law," she said, "this crystal can only bond with a life partner if given freely. Not arranged, not forced, not demanded. If I offer it to someone of my choice, and they accept, my family can't challenge it." Jonas stared at the crystal like it might explode. "So the thing," he said slowly, "it's like a marriage contract?" "More than that," Vera replied. "It's a declaration to the galaxy that I choose you and no one else." Jonas let out a long breath. "You sure about that?" "I mean, I sleep in a broken apartment, I fix engines, I eat cheap stew. I'm not exactly prince material." Vera smiled. "I don't want a prince," she said. "I want a man who doesn't run when things get hard. A man who fights to protect someone he barely knows." Jonas looked down at his scraped hands. "Isn't that kind of foolish?" he said with a soft laugh. "It's the kind of foolish I've been looking for my whole life," she whispered. She gently placed the crystal in his palm again. The warmth of it traveled up his arm. It pulsed once, then again, matching his heartbeat. "I don't know what kind of future this leads to," Jonas said, still staring at the crystal. "But I know I don't want you to go back to people who treat you like a tool. I know I want to be around you." Vera's eyes shimmered. "Is that a yes?" Jonas looked up at her and nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's a yes." The crystal glowed bright, floating up between them. Soft light wrapped around their hands, binding them in a warm loop. A quiet chime echoed through the station, and the signal had been made. Somewhere across the stars, ancient Zirali systems updated their records. Virelia of House Zirali. Partner chosen, human civilian, Jonas Vale. The glow faded, and the crystal gently lowered itself into Jonas's chest pocket. Vera stepped closer, her hand resting over it. "They can't take me now," she said. "Not without violating our own law." Jonas chuckled weakly. "Guess I just became a political problem. A very powerful one," she added, smiling. But their moment was short. Outside the station, engines roared. Several ships had landed nearby. The bounty hunters weren't done yet. They had one last card to play. "We have to move," Jonas said, getting to his feet. "I know a tunnel that leads out of here." He led her through a small maintenance shaft that opened into an old cargo route. Vera followed, but her wrist crystal buzzed again. She tapped it, and a small screen appeared in front of her. It showed her mother, the High Matron, broadcasting, "Live across the Empire." The woman's face was stern and regal. "To the Zirali people," the matron said, "my daughter has violated sacred tradition. She has bonded with an outsider. Any who shelter them will face exile." Vira froze, staring at the screen. Jonas looked back at her. "You okay?" "She declared war," Vera whispered. "On us." Jonas took her hand. "Then we fight," he said simply. "Together." She squeezed his hand, her voice quiet but firm. "Yes," she said. "Together. Far above, the stars shimmered as 1,000 watchers tuned in, some with anger, some with awe, but none could deny what had just happened. The heiress of Zirali had made her choice, and it wasn't gold, or power, or legacy. It was a human, ordinary, loyal, brave. The storm above the city had passed, but the galaxy had just entered a new one. News of the Zirali heiress bonding with a human spread like wildfire. On Earth, it was a strange curiosity. Across the stars, it was a scandal. In the Empire, an act of rebellion, Vera and Jonas stayed hidden in the mountain outskirts near an abandoned spaceport. A local engineer helped Jonas repair an old starhopper. It was slow and ugly, but it could fly, and right now, that was all they needed. Are you sure about this? Jonas asked, tightening a bolt under the ship's panel. You still have time to back out. Vera crouched beside him, wiping grease from her hands. I've lived my whole life doing what others told me, she said. I'm done running. If they want to challenge my choice, they'll have to do it face to face. Jonas gave her a proud look. Then let's go give them a proper greeting. The ship launched into the early morning sky, engines roaring weakly, but it was enough. They broke through Earth's atmosphere and vanished into the black sea of stars. Vera set the coordinates to her homeworld, the royal capital of Zerilar Prime, a place Jonas never thought he'd see. Now he was flying straight into its heart. As the ship entered orbit days later, a fleet of Zirali royal guards surrounded them. Jonas held his breath. Vera stood calm and proud, wearing a simple traveler's cloak with her family crest over her heart. This is Princess Virelia, she announced to the incoming fleet. I come by right of bond. My chosen stands beside me. The guards paused, then responded. Landing pad prepared. Royal court awaits your entrance. The city of Zerilar Prime was breathtaking. Floating towers shimmered under twin suns. Rivers of light flowed through the sky like glowing veins. Jonas had never seen anything so beautiful, and so terrifying. They stepped onto the royal bridge where crowds of nobles and soldiers gathered. Eyes followed them, whispering behind jeweled masks. Some curious, some angry, some in awe. At the end of the hall stood the High Matron, Vera's mother, tall, graceful, cold as crystal. Her eyes locked on Jonas immediately. I see you've brought your companion, she said sharply. He is not my companion, Vera answered calmly. He is my bonded. By law and by choice. The court gasped. The matron's face remained still. You defy the family, the council, and the pact. I honor the law, Vera said. The true law. I offered the binding crystal of my own will. He accepted it without knowing who I was. That silence was louder than thunder. Even the matron hesitated for a breath. Then let him speak, she said finally. Let this human defend his place beside my daughter. Jonas stepped forward, his boots echoing in the hall. He looked at all the strange faces, the glowing walls, the ancient symbols. Then he looked at Vera and his nerves faded. I didn't come here to take anything, he began. I didn't know who she was. All I saw was someone sitting alone in the snow, cold, quiet, and ignored. I gave her a hot drink, he continued, because she looked like she needed one. And when she was in danger, I didn't ask questions. I helped her. Not for reward, not for status, because it was right. He took a deep breath. You can keep your thrones, your rules, your gold. But if your daughter wants to walk beside me, I'll walk with her anywhere. And if that makes me your enemy, so be it. The court was silent. No one had ever spoken like that in the royal hall, not in centuries. The matron studied him long and hard, then slowly. She nodded. Your words are simple, she said, but honest. Perhaps more than many in this room. She turned to Vera. Your path will not be easy, she warned. I know, Vera said, but at least now it's mine. Later, that evening, as the stars blinked above the palace garden, Vera and Jonas stood alone. The wind was soft, carrying the scent of alien flowers. Do you regret anything? Jonas asked her. Only that I didn't find you sooner, she whispered. He smiled and took her hand. "You know, I still don't understand half of what happened," he said. "You don't have to," she replied. "You just have to stay who you are." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "Still want that hot drink?" She laughed. "Only if you join me." They sat beneath the glowing trees, cups in hand, no longer just strangers in the snow, now bonded by something far greater, something that began with kindness and ended with a throne.